Good morning. At this time, we'll call to order the Board of County Commissioners meeting for Thursday, June 7. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Schaefer.
Here.
Commissioner Allen.
Here.
Commissioner Klicka.
Here.
Commissioner Osterhaus.
Here.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Here.
Commissioner Brown.
Here.
And Chairman Eilert.
Here. All are present. We do have a quorum. Would you join with me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. For those who are present, if you have a noise-making device, would ask that you turn it to off or silent mode so as not to interfere with our communications. All of our meetings are streamed online, and we do not have any presentations or recognitions this morning, so we'll turn to the public comment portion of our agenda. If there's anyone present who would like to address the Commission on an item which does not later appear on the agenda, it's your opportunity to share information with the Commission. Would invite you to the podium, state your name and address, limit your comments to 5 minutes, and we'll be glad to receive that information. Again, as long as the item you're speaking about does not appear on our agenda later. Mr. Raby.
Good morning. Tom Raby, 17513 West 113th Street, and that's in Olathe. And I have just given the clerk a copy of Johnson's County Gazette. Now, that's named after Keith Johnson, not the guy who founded this here, that don't sound right, county. Okay. In this issue of Johnson's County Gazette, which is dated May 25th, there's an article about Heart to Heart International. And if you kind of wondered or didn't think about the kind of people we have in Johnson County, Heart to Heart International was founded 25 years ago in the Olathe Rotary. And it has since moved its headquarters to Lenexa, but it's still in Johnson County. But it is a true international, very efficient charity organization which has partners. One most notable is Federal Express. They can get medical and other relief supplies to tragedies anywhere in the world, and they've proven that over and over in the last 25 years. So I haven't seen them up here getting an award or anything like that, so I don't know if you guys are making up a list. You might consider it, but that's my opinion, because I'm not a member of the Rotary, and I don't know very many people that are part of Heart to Heart International, but I do know that they primarily are super efficient, mostly volunteers, and their expenses are very low, and their actions are very high, and they've proven themselves most recently in Corpus Christi and in Texas and in Puerto Rico. They were first into Puerto Rico and went the furthest into the island with medical supplies than any other organization, including any federal organization. So that's just for your perusal. I heard another item lately. By the way, I haven't seen this many white shirts since I was in the Navy, so that brings a tear to my eye. I stream, some of you know who Herman Cain is, and I stream his radio show out of Atlanta regularly because it's not carried here anyplace. And but I also end up streaming their news out of Atlanta. And some fella had suggested to his legislator in Georgia that death certificates, since they're issued by the county, in most of the country that's true, there are states that don't have official county governments anymore. They got county lines but no government. But wherever death certificates are issued, that info should be passed on to the election commissioner in that entity, so that a dead person could be immediately removed from the voter registration. What a novel idea. Do we do that in Kansas? I don't know. I'll ask my legislator, but he's busy running for something else, so I may not get in touch with him. But wouldn't it be great if we could stop dead people from voting? And it would be even greater if somehow we could stop the walking dead from voting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Raby. To your last point, I know Mr. Metzger has a program in place which they monitor information about those who are deceased or have passed away. So, but that's up to the state. Yes, you're right. Anybody else? Yes.
Mr. Chairman, Commission, Jacob Swisher. It's been with great concern this week that I'm seeing the misappropriation with the ATA and our relationship with that, and I just wanted to strongly encourage the board, as you guys are evaluating that issue, to please hold Johnson County's interest with high regard, and if so need be, we need to sever that relationship if we can't come to a amenable situation that represents the interest of Johnson County voters and its hard-earned resources. Thank you, Chairman.
All right, thank you. Someone else? All right, there's no one else to be heard. The public comment portion of our agenda is concluded. There are no notes for the record this morning, so we will move to the consent agenda items. Will the clerk please read?
Item number 1, consider approving May 17th, 2018 business session minutes. Item number 2, consider appointing Dave Myers as the 5th District Representative to the Housing and Community Development Advisory Committee through March 31st, 2021. Item number 3, consider ratifying the appointment of Fabian Shepard as the Chairman's representative to the Mental Health Center Advisory Board through February 5th, 2021. Item number 4, consider ratifying the reappointments of Kevin Clam and Joan Cabell as the Chairman's representatives to the Reach Community Advisory Committee through May 31st, 2021. Item number 5, consider reappointing Brandy Butcher as the 4th District Representative to the Library Board through April 30th, 2022. Item number 6, consider authorizing an exception to competition and approving a service agreement renewal for psychosocial rehabilitation and crisis intervention services with Foster Adopt Connect in an amount not to exceed $425,000 for the contract period ending June 30th, 2019, per Administrative Policy and Procedure number 110.180.a.16. And item number 7, resolution number 038-18, consider granting an exemption from the provisions of KSA 41-719C to allow for the sale and consumption of alcoholic liquor and cereal malt beverages at the Johnson County Executive Airport, OJC, located at 151st Street and Flum in Olathe, Kansas, and New Century Air Center, 1 New Century Parkway, New Century, Kansas.
Are there any questions by the Commission or any item anyone would like to have considered separately? Is there anyone present who would like to have one of these items considered separately? No one to be heard. Back for the Commission, a motion. Mr. Osterhaus.
I'll move that we approve the consent agenda as read.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to approve the consent agenda as presented. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Schaefer.
Aye.
Commissioner Allen.
Aye.
Commissioner Klicka.
Aye.
Commissioner Osterhaus.
Aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
Commissioner Brown.
Aye.
And Chairman Eilert.
Aye. Motion carried. Moving to the action agenda, next item.
Item number 8, conduct a public hearing to receive and hear comments from the public regarding governance of Johnson County Fire District Number 2.
Just as a note, public hearing is open. The process that we'll follow, Mr. Thompson, county staff has a report to share with all of us. Following questions by the commission, I'll ask the chairman of the fire board and any other fire board members who want to address the commission to come to the podium, and then we'll open it up for all other comment. So, Mr. Thompson.
Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. Maury Thompson, Acting Deputy County Manager. As the clerk and you, Chairman, just indicated, this is a public hearing to receive and hear comments from the public regarding governance of Johnson County Fire District Number 2. I thought it might be helpful for those interested in this issue if I gave a bit of history of what brought us to this public hearing this morning. So for this body, if you would bear with me, I will walk quickly through that history. As a result of concerns brought to the attention of this body regarding the governance, personnel, and financial issues of Johnson County Fire District Number 2, a series of events have transpired. First is on March 15th, staff were directed to conduct a review of the district in regard to its short and long-term financial viability, stability of operations, and strength of service, and explore options referenced in the Cooperative Services Feasibility Study, which was conducted in July of 2017. On April 19th, that said study was delivered to this body, and a copy has again been provided to you this morning. And I will, of course, come back to that, and we'll review that at a high level this morning. Then on May 10th, this body, sitting as a committee of the whole, considered that review and received comments from district board members. May 17th, this board set a public hearing for today, June 7th, to receive comments from the public regarding a proposal to convert the governance of the district from a fire district with a governing board appointed by the Board of County Commissioners of Johnson County, Kansas, to a fire district for which the Board of County Commissioners would serve as the governing body. Subsequent to the setting of this public hearing, notice was provided in a number of ways. This body directed staff to ensure that full and adequate and robust notice was given to the taxpayers of the district. So in that regard, publication was made in the 913 section of the Kansas City Star on Wednesday, May 23rd. Publication was also made in the Olathe News on Saturday, May 26th. And I would note that is the publication of record. And then finally, and perhaps most importantly in this regard, a mailing of the copy of the notice of public hearing and an information sheet was sent to the address of each property owner within the Fire District Number 2 taxing district. Responses to the mailing were 3. 2 mailed responses were received, and 1 call was made by telephone. Copies of those mail responses again have been provided to you today at the Dais, as well as staff's attempt to capture the conversation with the one caller, and that is provided as well. I believe that it is fair to characterize all 3 responses as neutral, actually, in change to the change in governance of the district. So with that, I'd like to direct your attention back to this study and walk through, again, a very high-level overview of what that study resulted in. Section number 2 of the report identified the threats that staff identified as to the ongoing viability of the district. The first comment was the transition to Kansas Police and Fire, known as KPF. Effective January 1, 2018, Fire District Number 2 transitioned from the Kansas Public Employees Retirement System, KPERS, retirement to KP&F. The change will cost an additional $330,735 in 2018. The additional expense, I will note, is not an immediate threat, but it was noted because it creates an increase in expenses while the district faces impending losses in revenue. As to those impending losses in revenue, the first item identified was what we have referred to as the Overland Park contract. Overland Park officials have advised the district that the contract between the City of Overland Park and Fire District Number 2 will be discontinued. During 2022, Fire District Number 2 will discontinue services, and Overland Park will make the minimum payment under the current contract, which is $220,000. The contractual relationship will then be discontinued completely at the end of 2022 with the exception of what we've referred to as the island annexation area that accounts for an inconsequential amount of revenue. The discontinuation of the contract services and its full measure will result in an estimated loss of revenue of over $770,000 annually. So as a result, Fire District Number 2 is likely to remain financially viable beyond 2021 without raising the Fire District mill levy or affecting service levels. A little bit about the projections that staff made. I assumed optimistic annual increases in ad valorem revenues of 5 to 6% and a reasonable growth in expenses. 3.25% was the projection we used. With those assumptions, Fire District Number 2 would experience a deficit of nearly $400,000 in 2022 and over $500,000 in 23 due to the lost contract. I will draw your attention to the bottom of page 2. In the course of verification of this information with the City of Overland Park, the city did ask that a statement be provided, and that is stated at the bottom of page 2 there for your information. Turning then to the City of Springhill and the Miami County contracts. The Springhill contract accounts for 18% of the district's revenues, and the services and revenues related to the Miami contract are dependent upon the Springhill station. So have to take those in consideration together. Additionally, the discontinuation of the Springhill and Miami County contracts, if and when that would occur, would also result in the loss of most of the ambulance revenue, and that service seems likely then to be discontinued as a result. The loss of the Springhill station would also result in the need to increase staffing levels at the remaining stations to continue to serve that area outside the City of Springhill, but currently in the Springhill service area of the Springhill station, excuse me. The likely outcome of the loss of the Springhill contract is a reduction of 28% of the fire district's revenue, but a decrease in expenses of only 18 to 20% for a net revenue loss of somewhere, we're estimating in the range of 8 to 10%. So again, I would suggest some significant financial considerations for the district. Section 3 of the report laid out some options then, and I will move quickly through those. They were labeled A through F. Strategy A was the status quo, self-explanatory, do nothing at this time. B was cooperative services. That we feel is unlikely to result in enough cost savings to offset the anticipated loss in revenue that I've just reflected. Strategy C was consolidation. And we'll note that Kansas statutes allow for consolidation of fire districts with the approval of each fire board and authorization of this body. Consolidation, however, does require findings that all impacted districts will benefit from the action and that fire insurance rates may be positively impacted. Strategy D was merger as a county department. This action would require the dissolution of the fire district and may require legislation in order to accomplish. Strategy E was a countywide fire department, and I would suggest this is ambitious and is likely impractical in the near future. So those strategies A through E were all contained in that cooperative services report that I mentioned earlier. Staff's report added what we've termed Strategy F, BOCC governance. As a transitional approach, should it become necessary to protect the sustainability of operations and or continuation of existing contracts, the BOCC may opt to dissolve the existing fire board and assume direct governance of the fire district. Staff provides this report with a recommendation that the BOCC reviewed the options detailed within, which you have, and provide for public information and input as it works towards a recommended action. And again, as I've detailed, I believe that you have accomplished that objective and continue to do that with the hearing today. I will note that it's my understanding that the chairperson of the fire district has reviewed the financials as well and may want to address today an alternate version of those financials from his perspective. And with that, I'd stand for questions.
Mr. Thompson, looking at the revenue data and 2018, total revenue is estimated to be about $5.3 million. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And then as I look at the Overland Park contract, the Springhill contract, the Miami contract, those three items represent almost 33% of that total revenue. So it's my understanding the Overland Park contract is going away.
That's correct.
The Springhill contract is, it's my understanding is renewable on an annual basis,
That is correct on a calendar year basis.
calendar year. And a loss, would a loss of the Springhill contract impact the Miami County contract? Question mark.
Yes.
Pardon?
Yes. Yes.
So they would be unable to continue the Miami County contract. Is that right?
I would suggest that it calls into question that ability.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Other questions? Mr. Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Thompson, the Overland Park contract is scheduled to terminate in #22, is that correct?
Correct.
What is the possibility of that being reconsidered or renegotiated? Has that subject been approached to the city?
Again, I would direct you back to the city's direct words on that issue. My understanding is that there is no plans to renegotiate at this time.
Okay. It's in their long-term plan to assume operational responsibilities?
That's my understanding.
So if they extended, it would not be for an extended period of time, is the understanding? Okay.
Yes.
Clarify for me the options that you are suggesting. I think you did a very good job of identifying, if we do nothing, what the cost implications are. But of the options of consolidation or becoming a department of the county, how is that financial position improved for this operation?
I'll address first the consolidation, and a quick response is I don't know. That would take a lot more analysis if we're truly talking about consolidation, how many of the districts, et cetera. A little more analysis would be needed on that one. As far as the county department, again, as I indicated, that may require legislation, and I would defer to Chief Counsel for specifics on that.
Okay. So we don't have any cost analysis, regardless of the legality of it. How does that rectify the financial challenges that the district is facing? And I believe they are real.
Thank you, and thank you for the clarification. If you're referring to Strategy D, specifically
Yes.
merger as county
As a county
department,
department, yeah.
I don't know that changes some of the drivers of the financials. I mean, those would still obviously be in place. It would depend on this body's ability to negotiate different arrangements with those parties.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Thompson, I want to go back to your financial data. In using 2018 and looking at 5 years back, including 18, it indicates that the operating expenses have averaged somewhere around 5.5%. There have been a couple of years where there's been minimal to no increase. In 2018, there was an 11% increase in operating expenses. So, and yet when you look forward, the estimate is only 3%. And again, I understand assumptions, but is there a particular reason why, when you look at the last 5 years, it's been about 5.5%, and now we're projecting a little over 3%? Here comes your financial guru.
Is he coming up behind me?
Got your back.
I'm just referring to that paragraph in the report. Where are we? 3.5. Tom?
Okay, go ahead, identify yourself.
Please.
Tom Dugan with the Budget Office. First, I assumed that, given the current situation, that there would be efforts made to control costs. I also think that there were anomalies in that 5-year period that caused those jumps. Like the 11% jump, I think, may have been associated with added staff.
Yeah, okay. All right, but it's still there, yeah, okay. Thank you. Other questions? All right, Mr. Dugan, as chairman of the board, we got to receive your information.
Darrell Dugan, Chair of the Fire District Number 2. First off, let me say that the board as a whole was not made aware of any of this conversation in January or February. The only notification that the board as a whole that the county was considering any of this was when I was asked to attend a meeting in March. Still unaware as to what this was all about. That said, after the last meeting and reviewing the financial data that Maury provided, I did take it upon myself to go back and look at the numbers that had been provided versus actual hard numbers. And a simple phone call to the Johnson County Ames gave me a tremendous amount of information. As I stated in the last meeting, at that time the discussion was 4 to 6% increase, and today it's 5 to 6. But at any rate, I found that hard to digest. So I simply asked Ames staff to provide me the last 5 years' growth by population and assessed evaluation in the district, not the contract areas. So I could assimilate those numbers into the numbers used by staff to project our deficiency. I will commend Ames staff. They were tremendous about getting the data back to me. I then turned that data over to our accountant, and to say the least, I think he was a little surprised. As I stated in the previous meeting, we were talking about a 4 to 6% increase, when in fact it's a 4 to 6% increase on assessed evaluation from the previous year, but it doesn't factor in new construction. It doesn't factor in those growths. Once Ames provided that data, it's apparent that in the last 3 years we saw growth in the area of 8%, and actually Ames projects a assessed evaluation increase for the district this year of 16%. Now, I simply asked the accountant, I gave him various scenarios to plug numbers into these projections, and I guess he provided that data at someone else's request previously that was presented to you. So I simply asked him to take the data that I just provided him from Ames and plug it into those projections. The numbers were totally different. I provided that data to our commissioner, and I understand he's asked staff to take a look at it. Last time I was here, I talked about reducing equipment reserves and that sort of thing to get past the 2022. It's apparent by these new numbers we don't have to do that. We don't have to do that. In fact, we can continue to make the same deposits to those equipment reserve funds and include increases in pay to our staff while still demonstrating the ability to manage expenses as we have in the past. And as I previously stated, this particular fire district's annual budget generally has been pulled out of the other fire districts when this board approves their annual budget because it seems to be solid. There's minimal or no discussion. So I was quite alarmed when I began to put together all the data that was causing this to happen. I can say that the majority of the board does not feel that this is not a manageable situation. The projections based on the data provided by Ames, carried out through 2025. And in a conversation this morning with our accountant, because I put him on the spot yesterday, I said, tell me your opinion. He said, well, I can't give you my opinion. No governmental entity can look that far down the road. You have to budget from year to year and project in a minimal of time in front of that. So I just simply say that based on the new data, the premise that we are in a financial situation that is insurmountable is wrong. It's wrong. I just wished I had had this information that was provided to you back in January, February, or whenever that was provided. And I really wish the rest of the board had had the opportunity to review that, and quite possibly we wouldn't be here today talking. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Let me, Mr. Dugan, let me ask you, from a review in the next 2 years, let's say, or maybe even 3 years, I would agree, but the pending elimination of the Overland Park contract and the year-to-year possibility of the Springhill contract, I think behooves us to think more than just next year or the year after. And I think in the discussions we've had, that's where the commission's at. And some of the documentation you provided, and again, there can be two sets of opinions, I think, on the numbers or assumptions. But one of your assumptions, as I recall, was no increase in salary for the employees over a 5-year period.
That's incorrect. That assumption was never made.
What was the assumption?
We have a minimal pay increase in 2019, 18-19. And then we go back into a 2% increase based on inflation and cost of living projected forward.
Oh, I see. So it's either cost of living or inflation.
Right. And in fact, the budget that we will probably end up with, because we have not, the board hasn't decided on that yet this year, irregardless of the budget that we decide on this year, is going to see a reduction in our mill levy. Anywhere from 3/4 of 1 point, and one actual projection is 1.8 points. Reduction in mill levy.
Well, let me ask you this. If the Overland Park contract goes away, you're unsuccessful in negotiating a contract with Springhill, and therefore you lose the Miami contract, and 33% of your revenue goes away, how will you address that?
This board has been charged to renegotiate that contract with the city of Springhill since its beginning on an annual basis. The same thing with the Miami County contract. I don't think that we're going to be unable. We have had the ability in the last 2 to 3 years to increase the contract value with the city of Springhill.
Well,
with the idea that quite possibly we can eventually get that particular contract area with the city of Springhill to be paying at the same mill levy that the rest of the fire district pays for those services. As I stated previously, the state legislature changed their rules, which simply a vote of the city council would allow the city to bring that area into our fire district and remove that function from them. Of the city taxing for that, the fire district would. And as I stated previously, the impact to a $100,000 assessed evaluation home in that contract area about $29 to $30. So the point, to answer your question, is we've had to renegotiate that Springhill contract every year since the beginning of time. And I don't see that as a problem. When you review the options of the city of Springhill to contract, they're going to have to contract those services from somewhere. We're already there. We're already established. We have, until recently, our largest fire station right there in their city. I would think that it would behoove them for us to reach an agreement on an ongoing basis.
Okay. Let me ask you a question, shifting gears just a little bit. I've had conversations with several fire district employees, raising concern about various actions that have been taken by the board. And I know in one instance, in a public meeting, there was a motion made to adopt the county's code of ethics for employees, and that motion was rejected. Can you explain that action?
Well, as I explained that last time, the motion was made. I don't recall the first meeting it was made. It was either made in January or February, and it didn't get a second. It was made again in the next meeting, and I actually seconded the motion so we could discuss it. And after discussion, it failed, 2-1. I abstained. Now, I have my own personal opinion why, I gave that to you last time, and I'll give it again. Since from the beginning of us as kids, we're taught to do what's right. We have speed limit signs posted all over this county. And those rules are broken every day, and we've got a whole building full of officers across the street. I just don't think, in my own personal opinion, that us having a rule to be ethical, when the board is already held to that because we're a part of of the county, I don't think us making a rule is going to impact our firemen to do what's right if their intent is not to. So I couldn't vote for it, but I did second it so we could discuss it, and it failed.
Well, I guess that's the concern of the question. Countywide, for all of our employees, we have a code of ethics, and it seems to be appropriate, and that's not accusing anybody that they don't follow a particular standard on their own, but it gives everybody guidance. Let me ask you another question. In one of the public meetings, there was discussion about conflict of interest. Can you explain the origination of that and what was the issue involved there?
The board, a complaint was made to the district attorney on the board, a coma violation, and an investigator from the district attorney has visited with every board member. I'm assuming at some point they're going to report back to somebody about what they found. In the course of that, I personally was asked numerous questions about my involvement as the insurance agent for the fire district when I sat on the board. I was the agent for the fire district before I was appointed to the board. The fire district came to me, I believe, in, 2012-13. They were in a tough spot in that their work comp carrier, they were in the work comp pool in the state of Kansas, which carried a 25% surcharge, and their premiums were going through the roof. I secured a company that not only took them out of the pool, but offered them a dividend plan, which saved them in the neighborhood of $40,000 to $50,000 the first year. We continued that relationship, and their experience modification rating factor got better, and they received large dividend checks back on an annual basis, anywhere from a low of probably $12,000 to $15,000. A couple years there were $40,000+ a year in a reduction in premium. During the whole course of that, there was never a question of me being in conflict of interest. On an annual basis, I would present the renewal quote, and then I would not be involved in the vote to either approve or reject the quote. So to be honest, until the fire district changed last year, because that dividend plan went away, the carrier did away with the dividend plan, and so the fire district went in a different direction for insurance. until that point, conflict of interest on my part, I'd never heard a word. Never. Because I assume it was felt that we'd gotten them out of a tough spot. Now, there was another issue raised about a conflict of interest between one of the board members being a relative of one of the firemen. I don't know about that. I was not asked about that. Those are the only two conflicts I know about.
Okay, all right, thank you. Other questions? Any other questions? Excuse me, Mr. Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Dugan, for your comments. You raised a number of points, and I'd like to go back. And I was wondering if Mr. Thompson could elaborate a little bit on Mr. Dugan's Dugan or Duncan?
Dugan.
Dugan, thank you. His comments about the new construction being included in the projections, if that's true or not, and then there was some reference to some type of alternate analysis. I have not seen any alternate analysis, and the substance or extent of it and how that compares with some of the assumptions that are presented in the analysis that staff has done.
So as to your first question about the inclusion of the new construction, I'm going to defer to our finance staff back here, Tom, to answer. And while he's coming up, I'll move on to the second piece of that. And that analysis, as Mr. Dugan just stated, was provided by him. In my opinion, that would be up to him whether he wants that shared with the board. Mr. Dugan and I did have a conversation this past week about it, and we talked about it in a very high level. We have looked at it then in its regard. My interpretation, it makes some optimistic assumptions about the ability to hold down expenses in future years and some optimistic estimations about what they'll be able to do in revenue. So I'm not prepared today to get into a debate about those numbers versus ours, if you will, but that's the high-level analysis.
Okay, thank you.
Any other? Yes.
No, please.
I can explain my thinking in terms of the revenue projection.
Please.
I did not make any assumptions about changes in the rate of growth. I only assumed that growth would continue as basically what has happened will continue to happen. There were a number of reasons for that, the biggest one being we were looking forward over a long enough period of time that I did not want to make assumptions about a very high level of sustained growth, quite frankly, because I thought that was too optimistic to do. So basically what I did is I just assumed that the rate of growth that currently is happening continues out into the future until 2025.
And did that include new construction?
It includes the trend of new construction.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah. Mr. Allen.
I'm going to follow up on a comment the chairman had.
If I may. The data that I provided that you worked from was from Ames. It was their growth data that demonstrated the 8% numbers. I believe, I don't have it in front of me, but I believe it was at least for the last 2 years and possibly 3 years. Maybe one of those was 11%, but actually the projection for this year based on Ames data, is including new construction, would be roughly 16%.
Mr. Allen.
I'm going to, if I can, the financial analyst for the county was going to ask a question.
Tom.
In regards to the future projections for the increase that I see it's mainly 3.6%.
For expenses?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And the question I have is, projecting over a period of time 2% pay increase, personally to me, depending what happens, would it be 2%, or if the cost of living went up 3.5%, would it be 3.5 then, or? I know that's a board policy, but to that and then just the other big expense, I know the county's health insurance costs are averaging double-digit increases, and that does not seem to be slowing down. Just those two factors alone would give me concern that are we projecting long-term enough an increase that gas prices right now are up again. There's so many unknowns there. But I personally, that 2%, I wouldn't, for the employees of the county, for a long-term basis, to me, that's low.
I'd need to defer to the fire district to explain how that would all impact them. But there were a number of different things that I was looking at. First, their expenses are largely personnel expenses, and they just switched their retirement plan. So there were a couple of different things coming into play that caused me to be a little, I feel I was optimistic, but a little more conservative in their ability to control the growth of expenses.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Other questions?
When I stated 2%, that does not include the step increases that are automatically factored in to their positions. Those were in there as well. So it was a 2% increase over that. So it wasn't a straight across-the-board 2% increase. There was a 2% increase including or on top of the step increases that are already built in the pay program.
Okay, and then just a follow-up question, that 2% plus step increases, would that alone be maybe 3.5% or something? Or?
Could very well be. Our accountant, I don't believe, is here today, so I can't refer. Yeah, he is. I don't know what those John, do you know what those step increases are?
Not on a percentage basis, no.
Okay. But again, just my opinion, that would affect that projection of 3.6%.
Yeah. Other questions? Mr. Brown?
Thank you, Chairman. I do. Mr. Dugan, I have a question for you. This goes back to the Code of Ethics for Johnson County. You agree that the board is bound to that and has
Yes.
agreed to because you're a part of the county,
Yes.
but that the employees of the fire district are not, based on where we stand today, based on action of your board.
The board has not adopted that, no.
Okay. As just a point of clarification, I would point out that in the Code of Ethics for Johnson County, as published on the web and made available to all boards simply for asking, in Standard 601, it reads specifically, never engage in any business with the government, either directly or indirectly, which is inconsistent with the conscientious performance of his governmental duties. Do you believe in any way that your involvement in selling insurance over any period of time for any reason is a conflict of Section Standard 601?
Let me expand that when this came up, I contacted the past County Commissioner David Lindstrom to provide me the letter because when he approached me to sit on the board, I said, David, I have a business relationship with the fire board. I'll be glad to volunteer for that, but I'd rather keep the business relationship. So if you're telling me that you and the Board of County Commissioners do not have a problem with me being on that board and holding that relationship, then count me in. I contacted David. I actually believe he was in Boston when he answered my phone call. I also contacted Commissioner Clicker. I said, please check the files, the records to demonstrate that conversation was had with the board. Research was done. That conversation was held with the county commission, and the county commission at that time said, as long as you feel comfortable with him being able to wear both hats, we don't have a problem with it. So all I can rely on was the fact that my conscience is clear. I was providing a service to my community. I got clearance from my county commissioner, and the board at the time also granted that clearance. I hope I've answered your question.
Some. So do you have anything that you just explained in terms of clearances and approvals from anybody at the county? Do you have any of that in writing? And secondly, and I don't care about the amount, from 1 penny to $1 gazillion, were you benefiting financially from selling the insurance, or were you providing it simply as a courtesy insurance?
Well, I'm paid a commission, yeah.
Okay. Do you have anything in writing about the clearance on that?
Commissioner Clicker,
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Clinton?
Commissioner Brown, this came up, what was it, Mr. Dugan, about 3 weeks ago or something like that?
it was in March when
a few weeks.
investigation started.
And I did contact my predecessor. The discussion was in fact held Mr. Dugan is very much correct in what he's saying. We did try to dig up the paper on that because some of the questions that were raised, unfortunately, files of my predecessor aren't there, and we were trying to find it from other avenues, and we were unsuccessful. So I made it very clear to my predecessor. I took him for his word on that, so I believe that discussion did in fact occur.
I can go back and check what Dave sent me. Dave did send me something. It was some conversation that he'd had in the board, and I think the board minutes reflected it. It was some work session, so I'll go back and look for it. But yeah, that conversation was held.
Mr. Ashcraft.
I can yield to Mr. Allen.
Just comment, I've been here 10 years, and I don't remember those discussions. I just retired after 37 years in the insurance business, and that's something I clearly would have known and it would have drawn to my attention. And I'd frankly defer to our legal counsel. I don't ever remember any discussions on any type of waiver or something on this, so.
Okay. Any comments, Mr. Jarrett?
I don't have either recollection or records of that occurring.
Okay. Mr. Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, there have been a few references related to the relationship with Springhill. Do we have any information, or is there a representative from Springhill here that could offer some insights? Because for me, there are a number of financial considerations that the dynamics for the district are going to change regardless of what we do or don't do, and Springhill seems to be an important component. And if there is no representative, that's fine, but I would be interested in knowing what their thought process is.
Well, there are representatives here, and we'll see if they care to comment later on.
Fair enough.
Any other questions of Mr. Dugan? Mr. Dugan, thank you very much. Are there any other fire board members who would like to address the commission at this time?
Mr. Chairman and members of the Board of County Commissioners, my name is Rod Richardson. I am a resident of this fire district and have been for 30 years. On May 10th, I was before you and expressed my concerns and my review of the situation at that time, and one of the things I expressed was that the County Commission needed to do a careful review of the facts and circumstances surrounding your decision ultimately to have the public hearing today. And it certainly appears from your professional staff and the conversation that that has been done. So I compliment you on that. There's been a lot of discussion about money, and that is an important one because you can't work without appropriate support from your community, nor can we. But I want to underscore, as I did on May 10th, that from another perspective, the decision that you will make today is just as much about our employees, our professional staff, their families, and what they do, because how they are treated, how they perceive the stability of our district, how they perceive the leadership of our district through its board is critically important to how they deliver their fire, life safety, protection, and the ambulance services, the MEDAC type services. I would describe our board over the last year and a half as an unguided missile, and that is unfortunate because I don't believe that it needed to be that. But I'm going to give you, in a very brief period of time, what I believe you should do today. But before I do that, I would like to explain why I think you should at least consider my opinion as an important one as part of your decision making. Ultimately, what you decide has to be considered and weighed against whether your decision either advances or retards this district's ability to provide fire, life safety services, and the protection of life and property. That's the scale that you have to weigh your decision on. Are you comfortable with the way things are going now? And do you think that will improve the fire safety protection of not only our district patrons, but also our contract partners? Or do you think it will improve it? Whichever way it goes, that's the scale your decision has to be. But I want to offer my opinion. And it's a short opinion, but I want to preface it by saying that I offer it based on my observations as the chairman of this fire district from 1991 until this year. I'm still a member of the board, but I'm not chairman. Mr. Dugan is chairman. So I'm offering it from the perspective of having observed how our district has appeared before you for the last 26 years or so without so much as a ripple of issues. And you know full well the reputation of our district in the community. You know full well that we've achieved remarkable ISO ratings. We have done everything that we can do to make sure that our goal was followed of the best trained people arriving with the best equipment in the shortest amount of time to save your life or your property. So I offer my opinion in a moment from the perspective of being a representative of the district appointed by you. We're not elected. We have no elected authority. You are the real governing body of the fire district. But I also offer it from a long history that I've been very fortunate and very appreciative of to serve in various volunteer positions through the county that has given me a perspective about how this county works and how it ought to be served. I served twice on the Johnson County 20-year Plan Vision Committee, and part of the discussion of that committee was fire service to the unincorporated area. I did that twice. I served on the Johnson County Charter Commission, which looked at how government that's actually in process today works. I served on the Charter Review Committee. I served on the Aubrey-Oxford Township Zoning Board for 23 or 24 years. I'm a 30-year resident of the fire district, and I practiced law in Johnson County for the last 45 years and still do. I've been on other multiple task forces for the county, so if the county has asked me to step in and do something, I have done it. Have all my decisions been perfect? No. Have I made mistakes? Of course. Have I made mistakes on this board when I was chairman? I'm sure that I did, and if I had it to do all over again, maybe we would have done things differently. But all in all, I think our past boards have done a good job. So to say that the status of this fire district is important to me as a citizen and as a resident of this district can't be understated. Quite candidly, 27 years doing this job on your behalf as one of your appointed representatives makes it very difficult for me to express the opinion I'm going to do, but I have absolutely no reservations about expressing it. So here it is. It is my opinion that it is in the best interest of our employees, our patrons, our contract partners, that the Board of County Commissioners assume direct oversight and management of Johnson County Fire District Number 2. And frankly, that needs to happen today. This missile has been fired and is whipping around, and it's not a good thing for our employees. We used to never have people even appear at our meetings, quite frankly. The confidence level was so high, but now we have packed houses of people wondering what in the world is going to be the next issue. And I take as much responsibility as any other board member for how that's occurred, but it is occurring. Why do you need to do it today? Because I am personally concerned that if it isn't resolved today, and if the county commission elects not to do anything, that our honored reputation, our stability, our patron and contract partner confidence is going to be further eroded. That's not good for anybody because of the basic rule I mentioned in the beginning of you've got to protect life safety. Whatever you decide today has to advance that cause. You need to decide today to address and resolve the uncertainties and morale of our professional employees. It's ridiculous. If I come to work every day, I don't want to see a lot of fighting and disruption. It makes you nervous. It's tough enough today to do this job, and we're a district that can't pay the high numbers that Overland Park or Leawood or some of these others. We don't have the tax base to do it. Our employees are there because of their dedication to service for what they're doing, and we have some very long-term employees, and I think some of those very long-term employees are the ones that are most concerned because they've seen this rapid deceleration of what's going on. So I believe that if the district or the Board of County Commissioners makes this decision today to take over the management of our district, It has to be recognized by everybody in this room and the Board of County Commission that you are the elected representatives. We hold no authority under the statute other than acting as your appointed representatives to the board. So you're the folks that people can vote against or vote for based on how you do things. I think it's critical that our district employees be subject to the Code of Ethics, so there's no question in their own mind what they can do. There's nothing wrong with that Code of Ethics. It's very clear. Almost every organization I've been associated with, including the practice of law, has very clear, very definite rules of ethics that guide people's decision, including board decisions. So that's important to me. I think if you do this today, our district would then suddenly, to whatever degree you allow it, have access to the county's HR staff for HR issues, its legal staff to the extent that that should be required, to your financial analysis, which we've already heard this morning, and to your other professional staff. This is also going to be important to our current bondholders. Obviously, Springhill, Overland Park, and Miami County are looking over our shoulders at yours to provide stability and continued excellence in life safety. So I think as an also, quite frankly, and I know you've looked at this, the BOCC's oversight, direct oversight, would provide the county an opportunity for first-hand observations of how life safety services ought to be delivered across the entirety of areas for which all county fire districts are responsible. And I think finally, your decision today in this regard would essentially ratify and endorse the fact that the BOCC, as elected representatives, not appointed board members, have ultimate responsibility to assure that the lives and property of our citizens are protected through well-managed and effective leadership and governance. We're all human. None of us have the ability to do things perfectly. None of us have 20/20 hindsight. But I will say this. Up until the last year, if I had a chest pain or if I had a fire in my neighborhood, there was absolutely no doubt in my mind that the best people with the best equipment would show up in the most rapid amount of time. I believe that is still true today because of the dedication of our people. I am no longer confident that that will be the case in the future, primarily because I believe that if we don't preserve our contract relationships to the extent that they can be preserved over the long haul of time, the erosion of our district's capabilities to the remaining people in the district, as it would necessarily shrink down, means that you're going to have a much higher mill levy at some point or a much reduced degree of service. So I would only comment lastly about what I heard this morning about the numbers. The commissioners have asked a number of questions that I would have asked. But I think you need to understand, and with all due respect to Commissioner Dugan, those numbers are his numbers, and certainly Chief Francis is here. You could inquire of him about them. As I said, I don't think this is about numbers. I think this is about where this district needs to go and how it needs to get there. I personally have never been comfortable with best case assessments, particularly in terms of government, especially after we just went through the last 10 years of the Great Recession. We didn't see that coming either. And it was always coming right at the point where everything looked the rosiest. So I'm not comfortable with that. I don't know what the answer is because I don't have a crystal ball. I think your county budget analyst had it right on target. You can only judge where you're going to go in the future with reasonable limitations by what's happened in the past rather than by a rosy assessment. Maybe it will be rosy, I don't know, but if I were, if I were going to be advising somebody as a professional and taking a fee for it, I'd be very conservative about what that outlook is, particularly for a rural fire district in Johnson County, particularly, without discounting for annexations and all sorts of things that can come along with detachment, potential loss of Springhill, et cetera, which you've already covered. So I don't have any other comments, Mr. Chairman or members of the BOCC, except that that is my opinion. I have devoted a very large part of my professional life as a volunteer to this county. I think it is the most marvelous county in the state and probably one of the best in the country. Sometimes you have to make these kind of decisions, and sometimes the people involved as your appointees simply have to step aside and let you do your job, and I think that's what needs to happen right now. And that's it.
Okay, thank you. Questions? Mr. Ashcraft?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All due respect to Mr. Richardson's perspective, and I do agree, the morale, functioning, and ability of the fire department staff is critical. I do have a tendency to look at numbers, and you raised one point that I had thought of earlier, but it had skipped my mind, so I appreciate the reminder. I am not directing this to you, but one of the questions is the bond indebtedness of this district and the ability to service that and the implications on the bond rating for future needs. I don't know if that was part of Mr. Thompson's analysis or not, and if Mr. Dukin's analysis included that. As I had said earlier, I have not seen that, so I don't know. For some governments, that can be a significant concern. I think the current rating is it AA plus? I'm not sure. I think it's good, but it could. I'd like to know that component, and I'm not directing that to you, sir.
And that's Tom Dugan. Do you have that information?
I think Chief Francis may be the best one to respond to.
And that's fine. And that just, at some point, I would like to have a little bit better understanding.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, is there anyone else who would like to address the commission on this item? Yes, Mayor. Mr. Ellis?
Good morning. My name is Steve Ellis. My address is 19395 West 209th Terrace in Springhill, Kansas. I'm a resident both of the taxing district as well as serve as mayor of the city of Springhill. Mr. Chairman, commissioners, good morning, and thank
Mayor, could I get you a speaker? I realize you're tall, but get it directed so we can hear you a little better. Thank you.
My kids would tell you they never have any problem hearing you. Oh, thank you. When you come from the land of giants, this is a problem.
Linda has all the answers anyway.
I feel your pain.
Exactly. Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, again, good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to address you on this important subject. Our experience in the city of Springhill in attempting to negotiate a contract with this board demonstrated what we felt to be a distinct level of dysfunction that was brewing. What we have learned since that experience leads us to believe that that dysfunction was in fact toxic. And that has resulted in what we feel to be questionable decisions, infighting among board members, and deep concerns for us that this board would be able to provide both financially and organizationally stable leadership into the future. As a result of those concerns, I have instructed my staff to prepare 3 separate requests for proposal. The first is for both fire and EMS services, the second for fire services only, and the third for EMS services only. I want to be very clear that this instruction is not an indictment on the important work that the men and women of Fire District 2 perform every day. I've been a beneficiary of the services that those individual employees perform, and I hold them in the highest regard. When we talk about numbers, one of the most important things that you need to keep in mind is whether or not the instability of that board is going to result in instability in your staffing. When you start to see high numbers of attrition within your organization, you start to see increased cost and you start to see decreased support in your community. So again, this has nothing to do with the men and women of Fire District 2 and strictly with the board itself. One of the things that we know about machines, organisms, and organizations is when they are damaged, they produce unpredictable results. The only predictable thing becomes the continued unpredictability. It is our hope that we will not need to proceed services through a new provider, and we appreciate this board's thought to pursue change. It is our request that you honor that thought with action. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else? Yes, Mr. Leighton.
Chris Leeton. I live at 21876 South Lincoln Street in Springhill, Kansas. I serve as council president for the city of Springhill. I have a page of notes, try to keep it quick as I go through them, to basically give you a little bit of an idea of where we've come with this decision and that I support with what the mayor's proposing with going out for RFPs. I was involved a lot in the contract negotiations in the past year and a half to 2 years with the board, and it has been, as the mayor has said, toxic. First of all, I wanted to just thank you for the time to be able to address the Board of County Commissioners, to hear a little bit of this information. And as the mayor said, I hold the firefighters and the first responders for Johnson County Fire District Number 2 in the highest regard. From my own personal experience, I've served with firefighters in some scenarios out in Hurricane Harvey and the tornado and more, and I would put them up against any firefighters that I've served with, and I have them in the highest regard. And so my comments are not anything about any of them. It's about dealing with the board. First of all, I kind of like to just go through, in my involvement with the board, I feel like certain board members, it has not always been in transparency and in good faith. And a little bit of clarification of some of these things. What you need to know is that until the end of 2017, we did not have a signed contract with them. And only until we got almost into 2018 do we have a signed contract for 2018. What we do not have right now is a signed contract for 2019, and we're in June. So you should have that under consideration, as that is where we're at right now, and how you feel that you could be able to negotiate with us in the next 6 months should be a consideration with that. You know, I feel like only after I had a meeting with Commissioner Klicka that I felt that we made any progress towards moving forward on a contract with the fire district, with the board. Also, at times, we felt like there was a lack of being able to get more detailed information on the expenses from the board, and we asked for more information. It did not seem like there was that transparency there to look at those expenses. One thing that should be noted, and it's been commented before, in my personal opinion and from what I've seen, the move to go from Capers to KP&F was more of an idea of the mayor pushing for that with the city of Springhill, and came from more of the Springhill and not from the board itself. Some other things about the contract negotiations. Initially, we had a meeting that seemed somewhat positive in the middle of last year with 2 board members. For some unknown reason, there was a change, and we moved from meeting with Mr. Merrick, with Rod Richardson, to Merrick and Dugan. I'm still not completely understanding how that came about, but that's irrelevant. But then it seemed like it had a downward spiral at that point. It became from what was a reasonable discussion to somewhat more of a negative, almost confrontational perspective on that. There were some concerns as we progressed with the contract negotiations that need to be talked about, in my opinion. One is that as we progressed with them, Mr. Coder and I would meet with Merrick and Dugan. We would sit there and say, you go through our attorney, you go through your attorney. There came a point where they said, our attorney is not to be involved. It's just to come to us. And that was alarming to me as an elected official. And at one point, the statement was made in our negotiations, which made me decisively go to Commissioner Klicka, was the fact that Mr. Dugan stated that he was not to be held, he's not held accountable to the Johnson County Board of County Commissioners. And I asked Mr. Coder this morning if that was a mischaracterization from that, and he said no. That's pretty much spot on. So, in summary, I agree with the mayor. It's somewhat of a toxic situation. My optimism is not high right now to be able to negotiate with because it was done at the last minute last year. I have a feeling that it possibly will get to that this year. And if there gets to the point where we have to, for us developing our own district, which I don't necessarily want to go that direction, then we're going to have to look at detaching things, and that's going to be somewhere where I don't want to go. There's other things, but I think that it would be good if we could keep ties with Johnson County Fire District Number 2, but my optimism is very waning. So I just wanted to come make some of the comments about this, and I'm not going to get into numbers and all of that. That's between staffs and such. That's not where I'm at. I wanted to kind of talk about basically where we're at with Springhill, how the negotiations have kind of gone through, and it's not a positive relationship between the city of Springhill and the board, in my opinion. But that should not be a reflection on any of the firefighters or any of the first responders. I have them in the highest regard. Okay. And I also want to reiterate that too. So.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the Commission. Brian Diener, Fire Chief of the Overland Park Fire Department, 12401 Hemlock, Overland Park, Kansas. My purpose here today is to reiterate some of the discussions in regards to our current and future plans. There were some questions and sound bites in previous meetings of willingness to renegotiate. So I've been sent with a message to just confirm that our relationship with the district has been for decades. We have a strong relationship, and a lot of our conversations have even been codified prior to any contract in a reciprocal agreement that was set with both Chief Francis and Mr. Richardson. Where essentially we will cover areas for their district that we get to faster than they do, and they cover areas for us that they get to faster than we do. And we have served Blue Valley Riding Club for free for decades. The contract we're talking about came about 10 years ago when the city of Overland Park requested annexation of a large parcel. It ended up being 8 miles, which you approved. And this 15-year contract was intended to financially transition the fire district out of an area that we are going to be taking over. Our city council has funded a 5-year CIP that includes a fire station that will be in a location that really, quite frankly, no one gets to well. It's not that the fire district does not provide good service. It's just in an area that they're a long way from it, we're a long way from it, and we're looking to correct that by putting a fire station in there. Along with our MEDAC contract that ends in 2022, we will repurpose people and we will staff a fire station approximately in the area of 179th Street. So that 8-mile parcel, it has been since day one up into 15 years intended for us to transition at a reasonable pace to serve that area in regards to the western side contract. As far as renegotiation goes, there's other pieces. The east side along state line, where those are voluntary patchwork annexations that come in, we have paid for service there. We intend to do that until it no longer makes economical sense. Once 1,000 homes are built and elementary schools are put in, the check we write to the district will not make financial sense to do that compared to what we would be doing that. There's no date set for that. That is something we review on an annual basis, but currently the deal is we paid them their assessed valuation, or their mill levy on the assessed valuation, and that exceeds what we collect as a city. So there are financial tipping points, but our relationship up to this point has been effective, we will do that when it makes sense. There's no reason to do knee-jerk kind of operations because we have received great service from the fire district. In regards to the spirit of understanding, as we get better, they potentially get smaller and the revenue issue becomes an issue. It is a factor in our 15-year contract that any reductions in force, any displacement of their employees, we would look to be the high ground and give first right to hire individuals when we have openings within our fire department. So just wanted to relay that information and happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. There was someone else who wanted to.
My name is Jim Hyatt. I live at 8501 West 194th Terrace in Stillwell. I've served on a number of boards. I've been officers on a number of boards, both civic, involved in business, involved in church, and from time to time I try to get involved in something that's involved with government, and I've been on government boards as well. Attended a public meeting by the fire district, and because I was told it was a public meeting, as the night went along, each individual board member was pointed at me and no, pointed at me and no. Finally, somebody on the board said, "Gentlemen, what's your name and what are you doing here?" I thought that was rather strange. During the meeting, during executive session, they asked other people to come find out who I was and what I was doing there, and actually followed me out in the parking lot to question me. This raised a question to me, so I attended further meetings. I've been chair of organizations that were 8,000 people. I've been on executive boards that were nearly 500,000. I've never seen meetings handled in this fashion. Robert's Rules of Order are typically utilized, and I believe they are at this position. They are not there. According to a representative that has been to your DA's session on open meetings, on the state law, and has been to the State Attorney General's seminar on the state law on open meetings, they're in constant violation. They argue with their staff attorney about why they shouldn't be able to talk about personnel in open meetings. They argue with the attorney that is on the board about the same thing. They hold meetings that are not held at the meeting in the firehouse because they want them secret. When it slips out, they're offended. To say that these meetings are toxic and the board is toxic is one of the greatest understatements I've ever heard in my 72 years. It's an embarrassment, or should be an embarrassment to this body, to think that they have the ruling power over this. We believe in the community that yes, you've got a good fire department here, but we believe the supervision of that fire department is in dire straits and has a secret agenda typically for each individual member. I think it's embarrassing. With the rapid growth, the multi-million-dollar homes, the commercial development that's happening in that area of the county, we need to move to a more professional system of managing this fire department and get away from the good old boy system that's been there for years and years. And when I say the good old boy system, I think you know as well as I do what that's all about. To put it in the phrase of the individual, one of the other citizens that was there last meeting, the comment was, "You guys make the decisions before we get here. I don't know why you make a big deal out of your meetings because the decisions are made. The only thing you're doing here is formalizing them and announcing them." We need management of this fire district from a professional staff. We believe that you have the ability to reach that professional staff through the staff you have on board here. We believe that you are totally responsible for what's going on out there. And if they don't want to believe in your code of ethics, that says something. I agree with what Mr. Dugan says. We're all taught to be right. But you don't have to drive very far down the street to figure out that most people, or many people, don't live by those laws. You don't have to watch very news programs before you find out they break the law. The Code of Ethics gives you the right, through management, to dispense of somebody that's not accomplishing what you want in the Code of Ethics. I thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else? Okay, if there's no one else, I do have one question before I close the public hearing. I'll go back to Mr. Ashcraft's question, whether the CPA or the chief can speak to the amount of indebtedness that the district has and any issues surrounding that.
James Francis, Fire Chief, Fire District Number 2. I don't want to misspeak regarding your question, Commissioner Ashcraft. John, do you remember what the specific rating is on the bond rating?
I do not know the specific rating, but it's very close to the highest rating, 1 or 2 below the
My
highest.
recollection, too.
AAA. It is the best that could be done, I think, from the bond council for the district our size of a district and taxing base.
Can you offhand give us a number as to what the outstanding debt is? I don't think it's that much, but
It's about $3.2 million right now.
right.
We have 3 bond issues presently. We have one bond, an 07 bond, that'll be paid off in September. That was our largest bond. We have a bond that'll be paid off in September of 2021. That was for a station remodel of the Mission Road and Lackman Station and additions. And then we'll start collecting debt service mill levy for the construction of Station 81, which was a 15-year note. We paid the last 3 years interest-only payments on that out of the operating budget. Next year, we'll collect a mill levy to fund that. So next year, we'll have 2 bonds remaining and a total bond debt of around $3 million.
Okay.
And those projections were included in the staff analysis that was presented to us?
Yes, they were included in those analyses.
Okay.
Yes.
Very good.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, again, if there's no one else to be heard, I will close the public hearing. So noted. So we are before the commission to make a decision. As was noted earlier, there are basically 3 options for the commission to consider. If the option is to move forward and change the structure of the existing board, I want Mr. Jarrett to explain factors involved in that option.
If it pleases the board, Don Jarrett, Chief Counsel, we've given you to act on this morning 3 optional motions. The first would basically take no action, leave the fire district governance with the appointed board. Your second option would be to say, based on something you heard this morning, you need more study. You would direct staff to study and bring back some information to you and make a decision at a later point in time. And the third option is to adopt a resolution which would basically revert the district to a district that the Board of County Commissioners serves as the governing body rather than an appointed governing body. Not wanting to influence the decision, we have not distributed a resolution, but I do have a draft resolution ready to go should you prefer to do option number 3. And I can distribute that and go over what those provisions are and would be.
Okay. Proceed.
All right, the first page and a half are the legal predicates. You can pretty well skip those. Those are the basic whereas clauses that we put in there. They cover the basics from the district was created in 1974. And when it was created, it was governed by the Board of County Commissioners. It was converted in 1976 to a district that appointed a governing board. We also identify in those whereases that we have done studies and presented information and basically conducted this public hearing. The resolution, should you adopt it, would provide for those items that are at the bottom of page 2 and through page 3, and they're numbered items 1 through 6. The first item would say, from and after the effective date of this resolution, the fire district would be reverted back to a fire district created under a specific statute that puts the Board of County Commissioners as the governing body, and the Board of County Commissioners would then assume that role as governing body and not the appointed board. Number 2 basically would provide that the Board of County Commissioners would then undertake that role as the governing body of the fire district. Item number 3 basically says that all lawful existing contracts, financial obligations, other official actions and commitments of the fire district that were in existence leading up to this morning would be ratified and reaffirmed, stay in existence, and nothing in this resolution is intended to abrogate any of the obligations that the fire district previously had. Number 4 would basically designate that the chairman of the Board of County Commissioners would act and serve as the chairman of the fire district board and have all of the authorities that the chairman of the fire district board has to do to act on behalf of the fire district. It also provides that the vice chairman would be the treasurer and have all of the powers and authorities that the treasurer of the fire district board has with respect to actions to be taken on behalf of the fire district. That's in there so we can keep continuity with any financial payments, bank records that have to be done until we can reorganize with the Board of County Commissioners. The 5th item basically says that the existing fire chief of the fire district and the county manager shall perform and exercise those duties that are required for the day-to-day operations of the fire district. That ranges all the way from the HR issues to the financial issues to the day-to-day operations of the fire district. And then item number 6 basically directs the fire chief and the county manager to develop a proposal for the organization and transition of the fire district and bring that before the Board of County Commissioners as soon as practicable. The resolution is set up to be effective upon adoption, so if you adopted it today, you would assume governance of the fire district as of today. With that, I'll respond to any questions.
Questions? Mr. Ridgecraft.
Mr. Jarrett, with your experience, I'm sure this is not an issue, but since this was just presented to us at this time, can we adopt it today? We do not have to wait a week for any kind of disclosure or posting?
No, sir, you can act today.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? I do have one that's not specifically addressed in the resolution, but if in the future we desire to appoint an advisory board of residents, is that appropriate within the context of this resolution?
The statute certainly permits it. What we try to do in the resolution is say to the fire chief and the county manager, put together this transition plan. If that's a recommendation to the board that we have an advisory board, that would come forward with that recommendation on how they would see it being structured, how the actions would be taken, whether this board is going to set in a separate capacity or you're going to have items come before this board at your regular board meeting. Those things on the transition would all have to be addressed, and that would be one of the issues to be addressed.
Okay. But this resolution would allow all functions of the district to continue functions, liability, et cetera, from this day forward as they have in the past. Is that right?
Correct. It would just be under the governance of the board, and this resolution gives the fire chief and the county manager the authority to conduct operations on behalf of the fire district from this day forward.
Okay, all right. Okay, well, it's back before us. Mr. Brown?
Thank you, Chairman. Just a quick comment. I take seriously the thought of pulling a board internal to the Board of County Commissioners and away from a group of citizenry that pays the taxes and has the authority to serve in that role and make the decisions closest to the people who they represent. So, that said, I do not take it lightly that there are 7 of us sitting on this dais, and one of us represents the district as a commissioner, and one of us represents it as the chairman at large. There are 5 of us that don't live there. We don't pay taxes in that district. But I will also comment, I have heard much in previous public meetings, in other conversations, and here today that troubles me about the direction that this board has moved. And the further than that is the direction it's headed. So from that perspective, Chairman, I'm ready to make a motion when you're ready for it. Thank you.
That's fine. Proceed.
Thank you. I move that the board adopt resolution number 043-18, reverting Johnson County Fire District number 2 to a fire district created under KSA 19-3601 and changing the governance from an appointed board to the Board of County Commissioners.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to adopt the resolution as identified pertaining to Johnson County Fire District number 2, and that the direction of the board will serve as the fire board. I think Mr. Brown makes a good point, and that's why I raised it. I think it's important that we have an advisory board comprised of patrons and taxpayers of the district that we can rely upon and ask for advice from. Mr. Klicka?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, obviously this is this item that is very much in part of my district, and it does require attention. I feel as the representative for this district, I should add in a couple of my notes here, my concerns, issues that have come up. First of all, I cannot thank enough from Rod, Darrell, all the others that have served on that board through the years for the efforts and work that you have all done. But I see this as a time of evolution. We started out with the voluntary fire department. We've evolved to a professional fire department. And with that, it brings new and somewhat challenging issues to the table that we have to wrestle with. Finances, long-term financial stability of the district, of the fire district. And this district, compared to even the others, has a lot of moving parts to it. Whether it's the contracts with Overland Park, with Springhill, with Miami County, and so forth. There are a lot of moving parts. At the same time, our personnel issues get more and more complicated. And a voluntary board has more and more difficulty in trying to manage and navigate through some of those issues. And finally, we have just finished, because of the professional staff, or the staff that's evolved, and I'm going to say from a time of voluntary fire service to a professional staff, we've got the highest ratings with the IOS, which is extremely important to our community because that affects our insurance rates on our houses. A lot of the things, we've kind of had a perfect storm come up. A lot of these issues of a growing fire department have all kind of come and hit at one point. And Commissioners, I've kind of suggested this issue was going to hit us. I saw it, and this is not a who said so or anything like this, but we knew it was coming our way. And we've experienced this with a couple of our mental health board. We've had to change a bit how we're operating with the airport board. The challenges our voluntary boards oftentimes have is the proper resources, the support, financial support or backing, and other issues, and they end up standing out there on their own. And this is one case, and this is not something I'm all of a sudden coming up with at the last minute. Many of the more recent board members on the fire board have known my concern about governance and a possible need down the line to evolve into more of a consolidated board and a county department, fire department. So this is not new even to my appointees on this board. They knew where my head was for a long time. But this is, I think, escalated. This has come faster than I anticipated. But at the same time, I feel like we owe it to the citizens in the 3rd District, and more specifically those being covered by District Number 2, that there is stability in the world here, not only short-term, but on a long-term basis. We won't have all the solutions right here. It's going to take some art of negotiation of our professional staff, some cooperation from Springhill and others to help continue, and the chief and the staff there to help evolve this on to the next level. All I see this is an evolutionary process. It's not a slap to the past. It's just an issue is that we've got to evolve as we start we've got to evolve and keep moving forward. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I will support the motion of Commissioner Brown.
Okay, all right. Other comments? Mr. Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, there have been some references to kind of an undercurrent related to some operational oversight issues. I'm going to set that aside while I think it plays into the dynamics and the ability of the department to function. I'm looking at this more pragmatically, and I would echo some of what Commissioner Klicka has offered. I believe it's a bigger issue for Johnson County. Fire service is evolving. When I first came on the commission, I think there were 11 fire departments. District 1 worked with Gardner and consolidated those programs into one, and I think Overland Park worked with Merriam. The evolution for a county this size and this dynamic, and I believe the fire services do a good job, maybe a great job of working together, interlocal agreements, but operationally I have had challenges and questions about that, and as you know, Mr. Chairman, a couple of years ago we commissioned a study to look at those operational issues and what's best for service delivery and also for the ability of our firefighters to have the best training and the best growth and the best opportunity. And Mr. Klicka, I think your summary is right. While this may not have been the preferred route for this evolution, I think it fits in, and I would hope that if the county does assume responsibility for it, that we maintain a posture of looking at the continuation of that evolution for the betterment of services, the cost effectiveness of those services, and with that in mind, I will also be supportive of it.
Okay. Any other comments? All right, if there are no other comments to be made, the motion is before us. So the clerk will please call the roll.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Aye.
Commissioner Allen.
Aye.
Commissioner Klicka.
Aye.
Commissioner Osterhaus.
Aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
Commissioner Brown.
Aye.
And Chairman Eilert.
Aye. Motion carried. Thank you all very much for your participation or observation this morning. And so we will take a short break. We do have another full agenda to take care of this morning, an agenda review. So anyway, thank you all for being here and your participation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Oh, yeah, we'll worry about that. Okay. Mr. Brown's here.
Pushy. Long agendas.
We will reconvene from our recess and continue with the balance of our agenda. Will the clerk please read the next item?
Item number 9, resolution number 033-18, application number SE-CU-3389, OX. Consider a request from DBL Architecture, Dana Blay, applicant, and Tom and Anita Rodenbush, landowners, for a conditional use permit to allow an oversized accessory building located at 5816 West 163rd Terrace in Section 17, Township 14, Range 25, Johnson County.
Ms. Leipzig.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Jay Leipzig, Planning Development Codes. This item came out of the Southeast Consolidated Zoning Board. They met on May 2nd to review this item for a conditional use permit for an oversized accessory building. Staff recommended approval. The zoning board also recommended unanimous approval, and it's for a 10-year term, and we'll show you a picture of it. There is an existing building on site that will be removed as part of this application. But with that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions you might have.
Questions? Staff. Is the applicant present? Any comments you'd like to make? Okay, so noted. Is there anyone else who would like to address the commission on this item? Being no one else to be heard, is back for the commission. A motion to be in order. Mr. Klicka.
I move to adopt resolution number 033-18, approving a conditional use permit to allow an oversized accessory building on approximately 1.48 acres for the reasons and subjects to the stipulations set forth within the resolution.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to approve the resolution and the recommendation in regards to the application. Any further questions or discussion? Being none, clerk call the roll.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Aye.
Commissioner Allen.
Aye.
Commissioner Klicka.
Aye.
Commissioner Osterhaus.
Aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
Commissioner Brown.
Aye.
And Chairman Eilert.
Aye. Motion carried. Item number 10.
Resolution number 036-18, application number SE-ADUP-3388AU. Consider a request from Guy Taylor, applicant, and Linda K. Guston, Revocable Trust, landowner, for an accessory dwelling unit permit for construction of an approximately 3,200 square foot livable area ADU located at 21044 Flum Road on 40 acres on property zone RUR, Rural District in Section 16, Township 15, Range 24.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Jay Leipzig, in the Planning Department. This item also came out of the Southeast Consolidated Zoning Board. They met on May 2nd, 2018. Staff recommended approval of this item. The zoning board also recommended approval of this item. This is for a 3,200 square foot accessory dwelling unit that accompanies a main structure a little over 9,000 square feet. And I have a graphic that depicts the main home and then what the accessory dwelling unit will look like. Staff and did look at compatibility between the structures, and we feel that it certainly meets all of that criteria as well.
Okay. Questions of staff? Again, is the applicant present? Yes. Any comments you'd like to make? Okay, so noted. Anyone else who would like to address this item? If not, it's back before the commission. A motion would be in order. Mr. Klicka?
I guess this is 3rd District Day all the way
It's,
around. I move
Are
to
you
adopt.
buying lunch today, by the way?
I move to adopt resolution number 036-18, approving the accessory, this is the correct one, correct?
Motion is read.
Okay. Dwelling unit permit located at 21044 Plum Road for the reasons and subjects to the stipulations set forth within the resolution.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to approve the resolution and the application as recommended. Any further questions or discussion? Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Aye.
Commissioner Allen. Commissioner Klicka.
Aye.
Commissioner Osterhaus.
Aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
Commissioner Brown.
Aye.
And Chairman Eilert.
Aye. Motion carried. Next item.
Item number 11, resolution number 030-18 and resolution number 031-18, application numbers SE-PPFP-3381, SE-CU-3382, and SE-CU-3383AU. Consider request from David Nepnick, applicant and Bethany Lutheran Church landowner for preliminary and final plat for 2 lots on 80 acres, conditional use permit for the church, and conditional use permit for a preschool Mother's Day Out operation in the church on property zone RUR, Rural District in Section 9, Township 15, Range 25.
Jay.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Jay Leipzig. This item also came out of the Southeast Consolidated Zoning Board. It was reviewed by that board on May 2nd, 2018 at their meeting. Staff recommended approval of this item, and the zoning board also recommended approval of this item. There are 3 approvals required for this: a preliminary and final plat for the 2 lots. Basically, they're carving out a 10-acre piece for the church. Also, the conditional use permit for the church, and a conditional use permit for a preschool for Mother's Day Out, also being operated by the church. The 2 items, the church and the preschool, were previously approved. The preschool, I believe, in 2013, I believe the church in 2006. And I can show you an idea on the aerial shows the carved out area that what the church would like to do. We also looked at this item through our Development Review Committee and looked for future connectivity in accordance with some of the provisions and things we talked about with the Planning Subcommittee group as well. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Okay, is the applicant present? Any comments you'd like to make? All right. Anyone else who would like to speak to this item? If not, it's back before the commission. Mr. Klicka?
I move to approve a preliminary and final plat for the 2 lots to be known as Bethany Lutheran Church, and approval of a waiver from the minimum infrastructure requirement to allow direct access to Mission Road for the reasons and subjects to the stipulation recommended by the zoning board. And I move to adopt resolution number 030-18, approving revisions to the conditional use permit for the church for the reasons and subjects to the stipulations that set forth within the resolution. And finally, I move to adopt resolution number 03118, approving renewal of the conditional use permit for a preschool MDO operation in the church for the reasons and subjects to the stipulations set forth within the resolution.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to approve the resolutions and the application as noted and recommended by the zoning board and staff. Are there any further comments? There being none, clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Aye.
Commissioner Allen. Commissioner Klicka.
Aye.
Commissioner Osterhaus.
Aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
Commissioner Brown.
Aye.
And Chairman Eilert.
Aye. Motion carried. Next item.
Item number 12, application number SE-FDP-3390 OX. Consider a request from Dan Knight, applicant, and Mark Calvin Dunn, landowner, for final development plan plat for 5 residential lots, Blue River Estates, on 19 acres, zoned PRU 1A, planned residential, urban, single-family 1A district located in Section 15, Township 14, and Range 25, 15980 Kenneth Road.
Jay.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Jay Leipzig, Planning Department, again. This item was brought before, or came out of the Southeast Consolidated Zoning Board as well, and they met on May 2nd, 2018. Staff recommended approval of this item. The zoning board also recommended approval of this item. It's for a final plat for a 5-lot subdivision. The preliminary plat was approved by this board on April the 5th of 2018, and the final plat is consistent with the preliminary plat.
So this is the final action in regards to this?
Yes, that is correct, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Applicant present? Any comments? All right. Anybody else like to address the commission on this item? All right. It's back before us. So once again, Mr. Klicka.
I move to approve a final development plan as a final plat for a residential subdivision located at 15980 Kenneth Road to be known as Blue River Estates for the reasons and subjects to the stipulations recommended by the zoning board.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to approve the final plat, a final development plan is presented. No further comments. Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Aye.
Commissioner Allen. Aye. Commissioner Klicka.
Aye.
Commissioner Osterhaus.
Aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
Commissioner Brown.
Aye.
And Chairman Eilert.
Aye. Motion carried. Next item.
Item number 13, RFP number 2018-007. Consider authorizing a term and supply contract with Global Tel Link for inmate telephone services at no cost to the county for an initial 12-month contract period with the option to renew for 4 additional 12-month renewal periods.
Ms. Friedel.
Hi, I'm Leslie Friedel from the Sheriff's Office, and before we start, I'd like to invite you to the cookout that's going on outside for Sheriff for Feed the Need from 11 to 1. This item is for the term and supply contract with Global Tel Link. We can contract with the provider. They provide all the equipment and the services. This gives us investigative tools. They actually pay us a commission for the right to come in and provide the service to the inmates. We are focused on keeping the costs very affordable, and we would get a percentage of the sales. Are there any specific questions?
Ms. Friedel, I understand that the sheriff general, or his general fund receives a percentage, and what is that estimated amount?
Yeah, historically, we receive about $400,000 from the commissions off this, and it does go to the general fund, and it is unrestricted revenues. It's different than some of the other revenues that the sheriff gets us restricted for a specific purpose.
Okay. All right. Questions, Mr. Ashcraft?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I had a brief conversation with the sheriff, well, maybe not so brief, but we talked a little bit about this because I had raised the issue, and I think the approach that the sheriff is using to try to keep these charges down for the use of phone service makes a lot of sense. I think it benefits those that are incarcerated as well as their families and has other residual benefits. But the question I raised with the sheriff was if he had ever considered some kind of nominal, and I will stress the word nominal, upcharge, and then taking those funds and folding them directly into mental health support services. Because as we know, and the sheriff easily exclaims this, it's the largest mental health institution in the state, unfortunately, but as a way to help augment those mental health services for individuals currently in, or as the sheriff pointed out, what often happens is they stabilize someone who's in jail, but then when they get out of jail, they lose contact, don't have counseling. So I just offered that as a perspective, but would like to encourage the sheriff and maybe our staff, mental health staff in particular, to think about that and see if there might be some market-driven consideration, because they make hundreds, if not thousands, of calls on daily or monthly or whatever, and if there's some kind of just nominal additional charge that go to mental health services, I think it would have the opportunity to directly benefit not only the sheriff and his staff, but also the patrons of our institution.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? All right, thank you. Is there anyone who would like to address the commission on this item? If not, it's back before the commission. A motion would be in order. Do I hear such a motion? Mr. Allen.
I move for approval of RFP number 2018-007, authorizing a term and supply contract with Global Link for inmate telephone services at no cost to the county for an initial 12-month contract period with the option to renew for 4 additional 12-month renewal periods.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to approve. Mr. Ashcraft, to your comment, obviously there's an option to approve, maybe that could be part of the future
Well,
conversation.
I'm sure it would have to be worked out, and the sheriff is doing this because he actually believes by driving down the cost, the volume will increase, and he actually may make money.
More money.
Or make a little bit more money, so it may not require a nominal increase, but that's the thought process. It just bugs me that we have such a mental health driver in our jails, and it's not just us, but anything that we could do that would leverage our resources, not exploit, bad word.
All right, any further questions or comments? Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Aye.
Commissioner Allen. Aye. Commissioner Klicka.
Aye.
Commissioner Osterhaus.
Aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
Commissioner Brown.
Aye.
And Chairman Eilert.
Aye. Motion carried. Are there any other items to be considered on the action agenda?
No, sir.
All right, none to be considered. Let's move to reports and communications, and Ms. Postoke Ferguson.
Chairman and Commissioners, you have a number of items on in your memo this week, and I'll highlight those. The first is the City of Overland Park have given notice on the public hearing to be held on July 9th, 7:30 p.m. regarding Edison OP redevelopment TIF project plan. You may recall seeing this before the notice came earlier. So this is the first project plan in the area generally located at the southwest corner of West 80th Street and Marty Street. On the project plan, as a reminder, there's no further action that this board can take. The next item is Avenue 82 redevelopment TIF district, and this is different. It's TIF district, so this is an item that you could take action if you chose to. And this is a notice for public hearing July 9th, same time, 7:30 p.m., concerning the adoption of the Avenue 82 redevelopment TIF district, generally located at the northwest corner of Metcalf Avenue and West 82nd Street, both in the same area, Overland Park. The next two items I'm going to ask Joe Waters to cover. The first is regarding the Johnson County Courthouse, and the second one is a good news on bond rating. So Joe, can you handle the next two, please?
Yes, ma'am. Commissioners, the Johnson County Courthouse notification, just wanted to let you know that is a Planning Commission item where they will be holding public hearing for the vacation of Poplar Street between Kansas and Cherry, as well as the preliminary development plan for the courthouse project itself. That occurs next week. City Council then in the following week will act upon the vacation of Poplar Street. The next item is good news on Standard & Poor's upgrade upon their reconsideration of our Public Building Commission bonds that were issued last year. You may recall that after that Standard & Poor's changed their rules and their approach after the tax lid was put in place in the state of Kansas, where they did an automatic bump down on revenue bonds such as this that were non-general fund bonds. So they have revisited that as new rules that they put in place in January and reversed their position on our bonds and made those AAA again. And I will remind you that that has been our status, that every agency that reviews us has given us a AAA rating for many years, but for that one, and now it has also been corrected. Great news for the upcoming bond sale, for not just for the Tomahawk, which already would have been AAA presumably, but this puts us in even better stead for the courthouse and the medical examiner coming up this summer.
But that step down was only for the PBC, so they've moved it back up again. That is good news.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, to add to that, the GO bond has been and has remained at AAA. our debt for that. The next item is major project update. So projects over $1 million, updates are included in your packet. It's a bi-monthly report. If you have questions, I'll take that. And the last thing I'd like to say is to highlight what Leslie said earlier really quick about the Sheriff's Office cookout. It's to benefit Feed the Need, and that's happening right now until 1 o'clock in the courtyard. So Commissioner Klicka, there's your District 3 lunch opportunity.
All right.
And that's it.
Thank you very much.
Fortunately, I didn't hear it.
Questions? Mr. Ashcraft?
Let me turn my hearing aid up.
Mr. Klicka, did you say you were offering to? Good, thank you. On the Avenue 82 redevelopment is the creation of the district, and the Mr. Jarrett indicates that we can only veto that, but could that not be reestablished without the county participation, or does the county have to participate at the creation of a district like this?
There's a disagreement on thought amongst folks on that, but the position that the League of Cities has consistently taken is that they have to include us in the district, so that if we veto, they can't go forward with the district.
And who is on the other side of the opposition?
There are private attorneys, those doing the bond stuff, and some of us county attorneys that say, no, if we disagree, they can exclude us. The statute doesn't provide for the excluding, which is what is the nervous part for the city attorneys, and so absent something in the statute, they don't want to go creating a taxing district that doesn't have something strictly according to the statute.
So if I'm interpreting what you're saying, it has not been tested in the courts?
I'm not aware of any testing in the courts, and clearly it has not in Kansas. I don't know whether it has someplace else.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. We'll turn to commission comments. Mr. Schaefer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Two items to discuss. Returned yesterday afternoon with my wife from the 52nd Annual Conference of the National Association of Regional Councils. As you all know, I was past president of that board for 2 years ago. The good thing about it, now I am past president, so I'm term limited off the board, but I can still attend and listen to the proceedings. Not all is lost, though, because Marge Vogt, our council person from Olathe, was elected president-elect, so she'll be president a year from today.
Oh, good. Very good.
When you see her, wish her the best and congratulations. That's how strong Mid-America Regional Council is as they support this organization. Speaking of Mid-America Regional Council, tomorrow lunch, if you're so interested, the executive director of the National League of Cities will speak to the MARC Assembly as the annual dinner. It'll be in the Plaza Intercontinental Hotel tomorrow at lunch, and I hope you can make it if you haven't made plans already.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Klicka, anything else you want to say today?
First of all, being gone last week, I didn't have a comment to express my appreciation to the sheriff and his team for our community meeting we had over in Stillwell the previous week. Sheriff we asked if he'd come over to kind of address some issues relative to crime, theft, and some things like that. It was a hefty storm that night, but we still had 110 people show up to that meeting. And very engaged, very positive, and so I really appreciate the sheriff and the folks that came out, kind of worked through that. Second thing, I'd like to ask, as a follow-up to the action taken on the fire department manager, if you would consider having conversations with the auditor to go ahead and work with the accountant, double-check the books as we take it over, number one. Number two, ask that our HR person people go in there, kind of do some evaluation, get an idea of what's going on there, and get a handle over that in coordination with the chief. I would do that. And finally, Mr. Chairman, throughout this whole process with the fire department as it evolves, I definitely want to be totally engaged in this process from a leadership standpoint, and would ask that we go into the next phase of it, consider an advisory board just to keep the community engaged in this process along the way. I believe that's what you have in mind, but I did want to get it out in the open. Thank you.
Right, good comment, yes. The auditor's normal transition review, and it occurs many times, so, and working with HR department also, I think, is a good, strong component. So, Mr. Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, just wanted to offer a moment of reflection. Yesterday was a momentous day in world history. 74 years ago was the Allied re-invasion or reintroduction into the European theater. It was the beginning of the end of a heroic effort and a devastating effort to deal with forces in the world at that time, and I think we should offer that moment. Sometimes we forget, but we all had family members, I think, that were affected either directly or indirectly, so I just offer that as a moment of reflection.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Allen?
Just real quickly, I want to thank the chairman for his leadership and county staff resolving the issue with Kansas City Transit Authority on Cora and Missouri Sunshine's law. Frankly, I think without our involvement, especially the chairman's involvement, that would not have been resolved as quickly as it was. So thankfully, they will be following both of those laws.
Okay, Mr. Ostrowski.
I'll second that on the KCATA issue. Our portion has always been open through our budget process, but it's important that we, have the totality open to the general public, especially with the amount of tax dollars that's used there. So kudos to the chairman and Commissioner Allen for their work on that. You had the opportunity to attend the signing of Senate Bill 375 along with the chairman and Commissioner Brown. That honors Deputy Brandon Collins, was killed in the line of duty by a drunk driver. That's going to name a portion of Highway 69 in his honor, so we thank all those who were involved in that. Had the opportunity to attend the Night of Hope with Commissioner Ashcraft. It was an evening of suicide awareness and prevention. Several members of our mental health board were there, as well as our director, Tim DeWeese, who is one of the presenters. So we thank those who organized that, because that was a great opportunity to hear not only from professionals, but there were students there as well to talk about their perspectives on bullying and suicide. So a very important portion of some of the things we're doing for mental health. And then finally, yesterday, the University of Kansas Health System had a an opening for their hospital at the Indian Creek campus. I was unable to attend because I was at Leadership Overland Park, but I know our chairman was there and several others, so thank you for that. An important part of our quality of life is our medical services, and it's good to see the University of Kansas making that investment in the 4th District.
I should, full disclosure, I was unable to make that commitment.
Okay.
It seemed like other things have interfered in the last several days.
Yes.
But,
probably
thank you.
Fixing the sunshine issue, perhaps.
Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Chairman. With much on my mind, I have nothing to add. Thank you.
All right, well, I just have a couple of items. Number one, we do have a 1 p.m., scheduled 1 p.m. Study session in room 202, 204. My sense is that's probably going to occur more like about 1:30. This is a review of the survey about county communication opportunities. Is that right? Okay. So we had the full review of the community survey previously, but this will be focusing on our communication efforts, okay? And then this evening, I think there are several of us who are planning to attend an event at Shawnee Town, sponsored by the Shawnee Chamber of Commerce, and it's called Pork and Politics, the eating kind of pork. I'll put it that way. Pulled pork or something. All right, we are adjourned from our regular session. We'll come right back for agenda review. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.